Bill Gates warns of global consequences from U.S. anti-vaccine sentiment. Imagine a world where preventable diseases like measles are a distant memory. A world free from the crippling effects of polio. That's the vision Bill Gates has been tirelessly working towards. But a growing threat is jeopardizing this dream. Rising anti-vaccine sentiment, particularly in the United States. Gates warns that this skepticism isn't just a domestic issue. It's a global one with potentially devastating consequences, especially for vulnerable populations in developing countries. He fears that the spread of anti-vaccine claims originating in the U.S. will lead to more deaths overseas than within the country itself, and could even derail the global effort to eradicate measles. During a recent discussion at a STAT event in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where he announced a $2.5 billion pledge to women's health initiatives, Gates emphasized the disproportionate impact of vaccine hesitancy. He stated plainly that vaccine skepticism in the U.S. is more deadly for children outside the U.S. because it spreads that skepticism. This is because in many developing nations, children often face underlying health challenges that make them far more susceptible to the severe complications of diseases like measles. What might be a relatively mild illness in a well-nourished child with access to quality health care can be a death sentence elsewhere. STAT's Matthew Herper questioned Gates about the escalating debate in the U.S. surrounding vaccine safety. A debate often fueled by figures like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the health secretary. Kennedy has publicly challenged what the vast majority of vaccine experts consider settled science. For example, Kennedy appointed a vaccine panel to advise the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which voted to require all flu vaccine doses marketed in the U.S. to be free of thimerosal. Thimerosal is a preservative with a long track record of safety, but it has been a target of anti-vaccine activists for years. More recently, Kennedy has criticized a large Danish study that found no link between aluminum salts, used in some vaccines to boost immune response, and conditions like asthma and autism. But here's where it gets controversial. While these concerns might seem valid to some, the overwhelming scientific consensus is that vaccines are safe and effective. Gates highlighted the Gates Foundation's ongoing efforts to combat these diseases, including funding research into a combined polio, malaria, and measles vaccine delivered via a patch instead of an injection. This innovative approach aims to simplify vaccine administration and potentially increase uptake, particularly in areas with limited healthcare infrastructure. And this is the part most people miss. The ultimate goal is nothing short of eradicating measles altogether. Eradication, meaning the complete and permanent elimination of a disease worldwide, is an incredibly ambitious undertaking. Only one human disease, smallpox, has ever been successfully eradicated. The world has been striving to eradicate polio for nearly 4 decades, with the Gates Foundation playing a leading role in funding that effort. Measles, like polio, is a potential target for eradication because it only infects humans. There's no animal reservoir where the virus can persist. If transmission among people could be stopped through high vaccination rates, the virus would eventually die out. However, growing resistance to measles vaccines, fueled by misinformation linking them to autism, could jeopardize this ambitious goal. Gates poignantly asked, "Now we're going to have to say, does rich countries' skepticism alone mean that we will not take on measles eradication?" This raises a critical ethical question. Should the unfounded fears of a minority in wealthy nations dictate the health outcomes of vulnerable populations worldwide? Regarding polio eradication, Gates remains optimistic despite the significant challenges. Only 2 countries, Pakistan and Afghanistan, continue to struggle with ongoing polio transmission. These 2 countries have reported a combined total of 20 cases of paralytic polio this year. When asked if the continued investment in polio eradication is worthwhile, Gates argued that abandoning the effort would lead to a resurgence of the disease, potentially paralyzing as many as 100,000 children annually. He explained that while improved sanitation and economic development would mitigate the impact in wealthier nations, Africa and Asia would bear the brunt of the consequences. Gates acknowledged that his foundation's substantial investment in polio eradication might influence his perspective, stating, "Once you spend billions of dollars on something, maybe you're biased towards hoping that it works." However, he maintained that his assessment is objective and that the foundation will continue to dedicate resources to this critical cause. He also expressed hope that recent cuts to U.S. foreign aid funding, particularly to the U.S. Agency for International Development, might eventually be reversed. "I do think that we'll make the case for a lot of that funding to be restored. At least we're going to do the best on that," he said. Ultimately, Bill Gates's message is a stark warning about the global implications of vaccine skepticism. It's a call to action to combat misinformation, promote evidence-based decision-making, and prioritize the health and well-being of all, regardless of their location or socioeconomic status. What do you think? Is the anti-vaccine movement a serious threat to global health? Should wealthy nations bear a greater responsibility for ensuring vaccine access and combating misinformation in developing countries? Share your thoughts in the comments below.